Hello everybody, I am HunterStarcraft, and I wanted to make this video to chat with everyone about the new Heart of the Swarm gameplay and multiplayer changes that are going to be coming in this first expansion. We have a long list here that was announced at BlizzCon. I'm excited to go over it with you guys. Some crazy additions, removals, and adjustments that we're going to cover. But before jumping into the Protoss changes, I just want to make a small announcement that this is actually a post from Reddit. The poster's name is The Rusher. I'm just going to use this section here as a guideline through this video. Starting with the Protoss changes, we have the carrier has been removed. The famous Protoss capital ship gone. I can't believe it. Another fleet beacon ship as well removed, the mothership. These two were removed because they just weren't used enough at the Protoss level, at the pro level. The carrier, especially, the carrier was almost never used. Mothership had some uses in Protoss versus Zerg, but overall, I guess it wasn't enough to justify keeping it in the game. The carrier is being replaced directly by the Tempest. It's kind of ironic that I will mention, but before StarCraft 2 went retail, the carrier was actually named Tempest in sort of the alpha days. So that's pretty cool and kind of ironic. It's getting replaced by a unit going by its old name. The Tempest was featured in the gameplay video I put up last on my channel, and it has absolutely crazy area of effect damage. So I think it's going to be used a lot more than the carrier. The mothership is more indirectly being replaced by the Oracle, which is a new support caster sort of harassment unit. And I mean, I'm sure it's going to get a lot more use than the mothership ever did. It's a real shame too, just because the mothership was hyped up to be this huge end game god Protoss final air unit, and it just didn't get used enough, and it's out of the game already. Kind of disappointing. A new ability is going to be granted to the Nexus. Arc Shield is going to basically place like some kind of photon cannon on top of any structure of your choice. I don't know if it's going to operate exactly like a photon cannon, but it does do 20 damage versus light, so it's going to be a nice little defensive addition. Also, it adds shields and armor to whatever structure you cast this Arc Shield ability on. 25 energy to use, and it lasts 20 seconds. So apparently it is going to be designed for early game defense, but I mean, it's also going to be used a lot against cheese. It's going to be used to help defend drops. You're not going to be as reliant on using warpins, using a full round of warpins back home to fend off some kind of drop that you're facing. It does require the gateway as well. The Nexus has another ability, Mass Recall. Mass Recall used to belong to the mothership. Now you're going to be able to mass recall any units that you want, a big army. Although it does say that the radius is reduced compared to what the mothership was. You can mass recall an army or workers, anything you want, essentially any ground units. And I guess I'll just mention that what I understand to be the biggest effect that mass recall will have is, in Protoss versus Terran, for example, if, some kind of mid-game exchange is going on in the middle of the map, and you've got largely a gateway army, and your Terran opponent has gone for bio, you're going to be able to escape now. Originally, like in the way StarCraft is now, your Stalkers will get away because they're pretty fast, but Zealots, and especially Sentries, because Sentries are so expensive, they are going to get focused down and, affected by the concussive shells and taken out. But now using Mass Recall, you're going to be able to, salvage a large amount of units that you weren't able to originally. So that's going to be very helpful in that respect. The only other Protoss change listed here is that low ground pylons no longer power high ground areas. So whether you want to warp in on the high ground or build structures on the high ground, you can't do that anymore. And this is certainly going to be, have a large effect on many matchups as well. Lots of Protoss players like to put pylons sort of just in range of their opponent's ridge, and maybe you could peek up the ramp with a zealot or something, and then warp in some zealots on the high ground, try to bust a wall off. That's just really one example, but you're not going to be able to do stuff like that anymore. Blizzard's sort of taking a stance, in recent patches, nerfing the vision range when you get up to the top of the ramp. Now they're going to be preventing pylons from powering the high ground. So those sort of work in contrast to really prevent this type of aggression coming from Protoss players. And also, I'll just mention that, like gateway cheese, proxy to gate cheese, is going to be a lot harder to pull off because a common strategy was to put that pylon on the low ground, warp in 2 gateways on the high ground, and if you're on a big map like Shakura's, it's pretty hard to detect unless your opponent really goes out of their way to look for those proxy gateways. So you can't do stuff like that anymore. The Terran changes are up next. Battlecruiser has now a sprint ability. It's called Redline Reactor. You're going to cast this ability, and for a short period of time, the battlecruiser is going to just move faster. So whether you're trying to escape and retreat, or whether you're just trying to get the battlecruiser, to the front lines and into combat faster, this is going to be very useful. It is not a skill, though. I do believe it is on a cooldown. Reaper loses building attack. I happen to remember the building attack name is the D8 charge. It's like grenades that the Reaper throws at the building. It does a ton of damage to buildings, so it's not going to do that anymore. I assume that the Reaper can still like just shoot buildings with its like pistols. It's just going to do far, far less damage. And so that's a nerf to the Reaper, of course. It has a buff too here. Now the Reaper gains hit points slowly when it is out of combat. So you're going to be able to move in with a handful of Reapers, do some nice worker line harassment, and then after your Reapers have taken a little bit of damage, get out of there, let their health regen, and then you can move back in for more harassment or for more scouting or anything like that. It's a pretty interesting mechanic. Never seen that in a Terran unit before. There's never been a Terran unit that regens its own health, so that's pretty cool. The Ghost Cloak has been changed slightly. It used to be so that you turn on Cloak, it starts to drain your energy, and sort of a drip, drip, drip as the energy points drop, and then, when you run out of energy, Cloak turns off. Now it's different. You actually cast Cloak, and Cloak has a set amount of time, and then, once the spell wears out, you would have to just cast it again. So that is just a slight adjustment. On the pro level, I don't think this is actually going to have a large effect at all. Thor has changed dramatically. These next 4 changes are actually all about the Thor. So I'll just give you a little info. The Thor has been replaced by the Warhound in some respects. Blizzard, and more specifically, Dustin Browder and the StarCraft 2 gameplay team thought that the Thor was just a little bit big and bulky. Its area of effect anti-air attack, that javelin missile, which does crazy damage to clumped up mutas or Vikings or whatever. It was hard to get the Thor in position to, get that attack off. And really big radius on the Thor. It's a really fat unit, and it just didn't really make sense to them the way the Thor functions currently. So they've changed it in all these different ways. And as I mentioned at the beginning there, the Warhound now is sort of replacing the Thor in some respects. The Warhound now has the anti-air area of effect attack. So yeah, the Warhound's kind of like a miniature Thor, and the Thor is now going to become this huge endgame dominant unit, and I'm really excited to see it. It's now going to cost 600 minerals and apparently no gas, which I don't think any Terran players are going to have problems with, because by the time you're getting this new Thor out, you're going to have such a big economy and so many mules that 600 minerals won't be the end of the world if they want it. It does require a fusion core, though, so that's pretty cool. The fusion core sort of establishing itself as this sort of the ultimate Terran structure, allowing you access to the battlecruiser and this new Thor. The Thor, you can actually only build one of them now. And this is a big change, because there were plenty of Terran players who would build, whether it's just 2 or 3 Thors, versus mutas to help zone the mutas, or if you're going for a really crazy rush to Thor build. I guess that was more common, in the metagame from months ago. But there are, regardless, plenty of builds that incorporate multiple Thors. Now you can only build one, and the Thor no longer has its anti-air attack, loses the air attack, that javelin missile. It has bombardment, and I don't know, bombardment just sounds exactly like the strike cannons from our current Thor. Just does a ton of damage to one target, and then it resets and you can do whatever else with it. So it's got this bombardment, so that's going to be similar. Of course, attack and HP, as I would certainly expect, is going to go way up. So it's going to be like the true ultimate, mech walker. It's going to be pretty cool. I'm wondering, how that's going to have an effect, as I am with all of these changes. There's so many changes here. We're going to move on to the Zerg changes now. The Overseer has been removed. So now you're going to get detection from the Viper. The Viper's a new air caster unit, and the Viper can cast a spell that grants any friendly unit permanent detection. So that is replacing the Overseer in terms of mobile detection. I mean, what else are you going to miss? The Contaminate spell, which shuts down any structure you cast it on. I mean, that wasn't used a whole lot. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think Zerg players are going to miss the Overseer very much at all. Just because, I mean, the Viper's new ability is a pretty good replacement. Although getting a Viper out is probably going to be quite a bit more expensive than getting an Overseer out. So we'll have to see sort of some feedback on that and if they're going to adjust that at all. I'm sure that this is a very much anticipated change here. Hydra's speed increased by 50% off creep. You're going to need to upgrade it. And this is a Hive Tech upgrade. Ooh, so yeah, Hive Tech. It's going to take quite a while to get this upgrade out. You're not going to be able to push for quite a long time. But yeah, Hive Tech upgrade, 150 gas, 150 minerals, and apparently with 50% increase in speed off creep, Hydras are going to be the same speed on and off creep. So Hydras don't get a creep bonus anymore. I think the only other unit not to get a creep bonus, speed bonus, is the drone, and there might be one more that I can't remember. But yeah, so Hydra's going to be far more viable. You're actually going to be able to retreat with Hydras now. Of course, the way it currently is, if you're pushing out with Hydras and you're pushing off creep and you get in trouble, like, you are not running away. Those Hydras are fighting to the death. No point in trying to retreat. Now you're going to have a much better chance with this upgrade here. The next change here, Burrowed Banelings can move. Wow. I'm sure glad it's a Hive Tech upgrade. 150 gas, 150 minerals. That's pretty crazy. Basically, when you reach the late game, whether you're going up, no matter what matchup you're in, your opponent is going to need like constant mobile detection just to watch out for these Burrowed Banelings that move, and detection in the base. Like, imagine getting Burrowed Banelings moving to all the different expansions. If your opponent has got like 3 or 4 bases, you can send just a handful of Burrowed Banelings to each one and blow up a ton of workers. This is a crazy addition. I don't know how this is actually going to turn out. The Ultralisks have been changed as well. This is actually really cool. This was featured at the very end of my last video. Ultras have Burrow Charge-like ability. It's called Burrow Assault. No research is required. You don't even need Burrow, apparently. It's got a 30-second cooldown. So it's sort of similar to the Charge on the Zealot. Of course, not nearly, or sorry, the cooldown on Zealots for charges is much less than 30 seconds. But the way this works, the Ultralisk basically dives into the ground and then moves maybe halfway across the screen, maybe a little less than that. But it moves. It's more than the charge on the Zealot. It moves quite a ways underground and then sort of explodes up through the earth. It sends any units flying. It was really cool seeing it happen to the Marines. A bunch of the Marines go flying, and then the Thor, or sorry, Thor Hydra, the Ultralisk is then right in the middle of the battle and can do a ton of splash damage, a ton of melee damage to any units around it. So that's just going to be so incredibly helpful. I mean, I've been thinking versus Terran, because even if you just got Marine Marauder, you can basically kite Thors pretty cost effectively, and the DPS on that Bio Ball is gigantic, and they just destroy Ultralisks so quickly. With this new Burrow Assault, man, they're not going to be nearly as effective. The Ultralisks are just going to basically appear in the middle of the Bio Ball, which is exactly what the Terran player does not want. So this is pretty cool, and I think it's much needed as well, because Ultras have always seemed just a little bit weak. And well, we'll see if this is an appropriate change or maybe a bit overboard. We're only going to see in the beta, so keep an eye out for that. The 2 final changes here for the Zerg have to do with the Corruptor. Corruptor no longer has Corruption. Corruption increases, it's like an amplified damage, increases damage taken casted on enemy units, obviously. Now they have a Siphon ability. So you cast Siphon on buildings. It does 1 damage per second and converts damage done to minerals. That's a really interesting ability. I think that's just going to be really annoying for the most part for your opponent to sort of have to be shooing away these corruptors that are like leeching onto your structures. It's I don't know how useful that is for the Zerg player if they're going to be really focused on this or if they could spend their time better, doing other things. 1 damage per second converts damage done to minerals. I don't know. I don't think we actually have quite enough information on this ability just yet. I know that they're still sort of tweaking it, like the animation isn't done or anything. So, we'll see what they're going to do with Siphon from here. Anyways, these are the changes for Protoss, Terran, Zerg, all the balance changes. There are some other changes here. I'll just mention this, just one quick one. Collapsible rocks are going to be new. They can be broken down to close paths rather than opening it like destructible rocks. I think that's a great mechanic. If destructible rocks are legit, then I think collapsible rocks are just fine as well. Let me know what you guys think about these balance changes, which ones, you're most excited for, which ones you're dreading. I guess it certainly depends what race you're picking. I guess I'll just add as sort of a closing point here that these changes seem a little bit optimistic to me. Like for the StarCraft gameplay, and balance team to think that in Heart of the Swarm, they're going to be able to implement such dramatic changes and such a huge volume of gameplay changes combined with, man, all of these new units. Each race has 3 new units, although I guess technically the Terran, one of the units is a transformation. This Battle Hellion is really just a sort of a morphed Hellion. So they've really got 2 new units for the Terran and, well, 2 new units for the Zerg, actually, so excuse me. But for Blizzard and Dustin Browder and the rest of the team to think that you can sort of add in as many new units as they've added and also incorporate all these balance changes. Well, I mean, a lot of these aren't even balance changes. They're just like flat out changes, additions, removals. Like these are changes you could never make in the regular patches. And for Blizzard to think that it's actually going to be balanced, I think is very optimistic. I don't know. I guess we'll see when the beta hits. I hope a lot of pro players play the Heart of the Swarm beta, but I'm kind of doubting it. I mean, unless I'm missing something, I think it makes a lot more sense for pro players to continue practicing with their clanmates on, well, teammates, I guess, on Wings of Liberty and the current version of StarCraft 2, because of course they want to compete at the tournaments all over the world. They're not going to be worried as much about a game that hasn't come out yet. I mean, Heart of the Swarm isn't making them money. It's all about their performance in the current version of StarCraft. So how many pros are actually going to even be playing the beta? I don't think very many. And if these dramatic changes don't get that appropriate level of testing, then it could be bad come release, and I'm a little worried. I really am. But I mean, certainly this amount of change is better than no change. I guess it would be kind of boring if, not much new came with the expansion pack, except for obviously the campaign. But so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I'm sure we're going to get far more updates on these. I'll do my best to keep you guys up to date with all this as well. I enjoyed chatting with you guys about these kind of patches, changes, and just new additions, unit removals, everything. So much going on for StarCraft 2 these days. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope we learned a little something here. I certainly did. I wasn't even sure about most of these changes, but man, we're going to be watching StarCraft. It's going to be a whole new game. So I'm pretty excited for that. Anyways, that's going to do it here. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. Until next time, I am Hunter. Peace out.